Remember where you were when you first heard of the Mandela effect?
Nothing can stop the Mandela effect, and nothing can stop what is coming. So put on your tinfoil hats and hold on for this ride.
A matrix. That should be keeping people up at night, more than anything else. A matrix. That should be keeping people up at night, more than anything else.
Hello, my name is Jose Martinez, and I'm affected with the Mandela effect. Here's another video that I found on the internet, and it sounds like another STAVELEYS creations, how he's brainwashing people and thinking that it's a matrix. You're inside a simulation and you're time travelers and everything's changing magically. It's just nothing is real around you. And these people they're coming out of the woodwork. And I just wanted to show you guys the differences of how people are getting confused with the Mandela effect. And this guy doesn't sound happy about it. He thinks there are time travelers going from the future, going to the past and changing our present reality. This is how confusing this guy is, and he's just blabbing away about how things are changing and the world is against him, and you'll see for yourself.
Let me tell you why you're here. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there. You can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. What truth? That you are a slave, Neo. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage. You take the blue pill, the story ends, and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Is the world that you know. The world as it was at the end of the 20th century. It exists now only as part of a neural interactive simulation that we call the Matrix. You've been living in a dream world, Neo. This is the world as it exists today. Welcome to the desert of the real.
Before you watch this video, make sure you take your depression pills because you're going to need them.
Remember where you were when you first heard of the Mandela effect? But then you said to yourself, that couldn't possibly be true because everybody would notice and somebody would call 911 and the government would save you. And that would be the end of the story and everything would be all better. What is the Mandela effect? It's the idea of subtle changes in the timeline, but people would notice. There's probably a lot of people out there that still think that it's happening. And what if it is? That perhaps is one of the most dangerous questions that we can ask right now. What if they invent time travel in the future? What does that mean? What would they do? Who would be these people that would travel back in time to observe and perhaps intervene? And what if they did intervene? What are the implications there? Thinking about this type of scenario could turn into a saga. You could talk about this for days. And most people don't have the time for that. There's other things to think about. The bread and circus. And many other things. Basic things. Basic needs. How to survive. Who has the time to contemplate time travel? And even if we were able to prove that time travel is real, who would you call? Ghostbusters? The FBI?
Thank you, Mr. Stavely, for brainwashing all these people.
That is the question. What can be done? What's the point of talking about time travel if there's nothing we can do about it? In fact, there's many videos on this subject. What if people from the future are coming into this timeline? What happens if they change the slightest little thing? Does that automatically become a parallel universe? Or is there a singularity to the universe? It's always one timeline. It's always one chalkboard. And somebody can come in with an eraser and somebody else can come in with a marker. And perhaps the people with the marker are catching up to the people with an eraser. This spawns the idea of a type of war, a type of conflict, different factions traveling through time for their own benefit to change history.
This guy thinks that the time travelers are changing history and are attacking his life or his memories.
What advantage would there be if you could intervene your politics sooner in world history? Promote transhumanism earlier in human history. We could contemplate time travel, but you also have to contemplate who's going to be traveling in time. What does the future look like? We've watched it go from the Happy Days to the Brady Bunch to whatever it is out there today. What direction are we going right now? A terrible direction, a direction of transhumanism, of a singularity, a single consciousness, a hive mind that drives human ambitions. Total assimilation.
You have to remember, this guy believes in God, and he's giving Satan a lot of credit.
Could be many things. But there's a high probability that it's transhuman in nature. Part man, part machine.
I don't know about you, but this guy is watching too many Terminator movies.
And that means ungodly in nature. Perhaps even satanic in nature. Now, that isn't to say that there aren't good humans in the future as well, able to travel back in time. Some for benevolent purposes, and others for malignant purposes. The idea of a future war impacting our present is not beyond the realm of possibilities. But obviously, if they make it too obvious, then people will get suspicious. And that's what everybody's trying to avoid. Nobody wants to bring attention to the possibility of a temporal war happening right now. It's kind of a lot to take in. You have to wonder about the technology. How far into the future are we talking about? How long before they invent time travel? Does it have a range? Can you only go 10 years? Can you only go 100 years? Maybe there are different forms of this technology, some requiring more energy that has less range. Perhaps one person can jump 100 years, but you can't jump an entire army for 20 years. Or something to that effect. Meaning that perhaps we've already passed into that event horizon, gone into the range of the temporal war. And you have to wonder about the different factions. Is it just earthling in nature? Are we just talking about future humans, cyborg or otherwise, jumping back and forth from the future? Maybe we are, and maybe we're not. A lot of people, when they look at pictures like this, they automatically respond, CGI, NASA's a lie. It's so obvious with the fake station. How many of you have seen the CGI with the fake station? Everybody out there, I know it. And it's so bad that it's probably very difficult to find real people out there that actually believe.
Put on your boots, folks. This guy is really laying it down for you. This guy's funny.
What NASA is saying. It's almost as if it's too obvious. Then you look up at the stars at night and you think to yourself, what's going on? Now, obviously, most people in our audience are Christians. And so we have a firm understanding of what we're looking at. We're looking at the heavens above. We're talking about the firmament. And automatically people assume the firmament is just a dome, but things were being placed into the firmament. And that requires room. That requires space. How much space are we looking at? It depends on your point of view. When you're in the city.
So if you're not bored by now, I suggest you turn off the video and go find another video to watch because this guy goes on for an hour. It goes on and on and on, and boy, this was a hard video to make.
Limits. You're not really thinking about outer space. You're thinking about going to Subway, or going to work, or visiting someone, traveling from street to street. And at night with the street lights, you don't really see any of the stars. What does it matter to you, really? How big is the universe? We're going to talk about that. Again, nobody has a rocket ship. As far as we know. Nobody we know has a rocket ship. And probably nobody that you know out there has a rocket ship. Nobody can really measure the universe. Now we're looking at the Matrix. That should be keeping people up at night more than anything else. The Matrix. That should be keeping people up at night more than anything else. Because it tells us that we're dealing with people that can tell the future. And the accuracy is beyond fortune telling. It's like they know. And they're making little changes to improve their cause. Subtle, yet obviously meant to accelerate the quote-unquote inevitable. And that seems to be one of the objectives here. But it seems like something big is coming. Something big is happening.
I didn't want to interrupt the video, but this guy's off the charts. He thinks people have a rocket parked outside their houses and they're going back in time and changing things around. And then he says, well, I don't think a rocket can take an army of time travelers and change the Bible, the movies, the songs, the continents. How are they doing it? So he's really lost in his mind. He can't figure out what the Mandela effect is. He thinks it's computers, assimilation, aliens. I mean, this guy's off the charts. And all because of Staley saying that his reality is fluid and it's changing all the time. That is wrong.
It's a huge change. It's a huge change. It's like they don't even care anymore. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters that's real. From our perspective, the only thing that matters is their agenda. And you see the numbers now, it's just exploding. Think about it in terms of possibilities. It could be like that, or it could be that every little thing creates a parallel dimension somehow. We don't really know. We don't really even pretend to know anything about what's going on right now as it is. Because the more you know, the worse it gets. The more you know, the less you know, in a sense. But getting back to the bigger picture here, from the Christian perspective, the Bible tells us that
Now he's going to start talking about aliens and how Satan can manifest to this world and change your reality, what is physical. That aliens have the power to change everything around you. And now he thinks that we are at war because his Bible is changing, his reality is changing. Now he wants to start praying more or find God because This is not supposed to be happening to his world. So he sounds very confused, and he doesn't sound very happy, like I said in the beginning. And I believe this is what happens when people tell you things are changing.
The New Testament tells us that we're fighting against spiritual wickedness from heavenly places. What does that mean exactly? The idea that's described is like a higher state of consciousness by many scholars. It's described as a person without a body in a spiritual sense. But if you put two and two together, it seems like the spiritual can become physical, more or less whatever it wants, within the realm of what's possible. So when people think about demons and aliens and the spiritual war that we're up against, it certainly isn't impossible to think that the spiritual wickedness can manifest in a very physical way, like Independence Day, like full-blown alien invasion. There's no telling what kind of technology we're up against, but obviously the realms of possibilities are huge.
This is what happens when you watch Brian Staveley's show and people get stuck on changes. They go inside the rabbit hole and they can't get out because they've been so brainwashed for about 6 years. People need to realize the Mandela effect is not about changes.
Very huge, in fact. And a lot of people want to just stay in that snow globe mentality because it makes things a lot easier to deal with. Life is tough enough. In fact, Jesus tells us to not worry about tomorrow, but to worry about today. For sufficient are the evils to contend with. And undoubtedly that's the solution to this temporal war. Focus on what's going on right now because they're trying to change everything. That's how you win this war. If it is a war. If it is happening. And it's probably happening. Otherwise we wouldn't even be talking about it. But there isn't a lot of proof or video that you can go on. But we are getting a lot of intelligence, probably the best intelligence when it comes to the realms of possibility. And some of it will be misinformation. So we don't really know. That's how counterintelligence works. And that's what makes these types of wars very difficult. Because you don't even know who the enemy is, or where they're from, or when they're from, really. But they're out there.
I believe his only enemy and the only battle that he thinks that is going on right now, it's inside his own brain. He's driving himself crazy.
And the information regarding this war is highly classified. We're not going to get an America's Most Wanted summary of what's going on. But we're trying to piece it together. And one of the narratives, perhaps one of the timelines, perhaps one of the universes, in one universe this has happened. And it may impact this universe. Because not only is time travel a possibility, but if there are many different timelines, many different universes. Perhaps it's possible to bridge or jump from one timeline to another. And so the possibilities could quite literally be infinite. You have to wonder about the original timeline sometimes, but in any case, in terms of our sector of time and space, it seems like there's a future war. Humanity against the demonic alien force that can manifest and change in many different ways. And you start thinking about the range, if there is a range, why we're being affected now. Have other timelines or other generations of this timeline been affected by this temporal war? Chances are, yes. You know, it's kind of like Boy Meets World over here. Discovering the obvious, and people have been dealing with this for thousands of years. But a lot of the activity that's being picked up out there has to do literally with a future Starship Enterprise. You just couldn't make this up. And perhaps this is one of the reasons why there have been so many Star Trek movies and the like, but we don't really know. Everybody's seen predictive programming, The Simpsons, etc. They just love dropping future events 10, 20 years into the past just to mess with you. And that way, if you talk about it, people will laugh. You know, you even mention the Starship Enterprise, and people are going to start laughing at you, aren't they? Aren't they? Aren't they? And yet, it seems like every space agency out there in the world, or many of them, are using the Star Trek logo. And it's not just Space Force. There's quite a few others that are using this symbolism somewhere in their logo. It's as if they all know. It's like the ISS. And that's like the endless psyop. You start thinking about the ISS. It's all fake. It can't be real. You're not even going to think about space and what's going on out there, right? Because it's so fake. It's like a mind block. Oh, we can't even go to the moon. That's how retro the technology is, right? And so people just, aren't suspecting a thing. It's perfect. I mean, it's as perfect as you can make it, really. If they started showing you the real technology out there, people would be freaking out. Probably. So what do? They dumb it down. The perpetual skeptic is never going to buy into it, and so there's nothing we can do. But there's nothing that can be proven either. So kind of works well. Being in perpetual denial about everything works well. It's kind of like an attitude, maybe even a religion. And it could even be controlled opposition when you think about it. These people are out there, perpetual trolls. Flat Earth can't happen, no aliens, blue beam. Let's talk about the bread and circus. Let's go watch football. Would be nice, wouldn't it? Have that normal life back. But according to the intelligence, and it's so out there that you don't even want to talk about it.
Well, if you're still listening to this video, congratulations, because you're probably the only one. You better take some more depression pills because it gets worse. And just imagine what his neighbors think about him, or his neighborhood, or even his wife if he's married. You know, they're probably going to check him into a hospital pretty soon.
Really? But supposedly, in the future, and perhaps in our past, there's been this war going on behind the scenes.
The only battle that I see coming, it's his own battle inside his own head.
Now, you have to wonder about a lot of things. You know, not only the range of technology from the future, but targets. Where would you go? Imagine all of a sudden, you know, you're Captain Kirk on the Starship Enterprise, and you could travel into the future or into the past to fight an evil alien race that's trying to destroy humanity. Where would you go? When would you go? Makes you wonder. But we're still here, so whatever has happened up until now seems to have worked well. For life, that is. But obviously things are looking more diabolical out there. In any case, in a previous broadcast, we were talking about the Orion constellation and the links to the world has been branded by the Orion group or the Orion faction. And when you think about references to evil in the Bible, there is a reference to a star, the morning star. What is that exactly? Is it Venus? Is it Lucifer? How does that work exactly?
Well, this video is driving me crazy, but I want some of that stuff, that whatever he's smoking and whatever he's on, man, must be some good stuff. He's all over the place.
But in any case, it seems like there's a connection between what's going on in the heavens above and what's happening here on Earth. And again, we're going to come back to this world famous intelligence report. But in the future, and we're not talking about necessarily a million years into the future, but in the future, and in a future not so far away, humanity is at war with alien races. And their technology is probably much more advanced than human technology. Does it mean that it's perfect? Maybe or maybe not. Perfect in terms of being able to accomplish its endgame. You think about geopolitics today. Our technology seems much more.
The reason I'm letting this video play out and has nothing to do with the Mandela effect, I just want you to see that once you get affected with the Mandela effect, it turns your world upside down. And these people are looking for answers, especially this guy sounds very smart. He's sounds like he's a conspiracy theorist. He's wide awake, just like everybody else here that watches my videos. They know what's going on, but they're stuck because their beliefs, their religion, their Bibles, so according to his beliefs, nothing physical should be changing, and they're not. That's where the confusion is with the Mandela effect. Everybody thinks that their books are changing, just like EYA and Staveley and everybody else around the internet, and they are wrong. Nothing is changing. We are the ones that are moving. And another reason I'm letting this video go on is because I want you to feel for this guy, how sad he looks. And he's supposed to be a Christian. He's supposed to have God inside, the Holy Ghost inside. He should be excited for God for doing the Mandela effect and letting us know that he is alive and how powerful he is. But no, this guy is lost. He's confused, like a dog running around trying to catch his tail. I mean, I feel sorry for these people, but they don't understand that nothing is changing. They are the ones changing. They're the ones moving.
It just takes a few nuclear missiles and all of a sudden it's a whole different situation. They say the entire planet is dead man switched, ready to blow. There's a nuke, hidden nukes buried everywhere.
And right now, he sounds hopeless to me. And it's very sad for me to show this video to you guys. But I had to. I had no choice. That way you don't into the same trap that he's in. A mind trap.
We don't really know exactly what's keeping us afloat, but we can tell that the Titanic is sinking, in a sense. And perhaps one of the reasons that it's sinking is because of this temporal war. And again, who do you call? You don't think they know? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. There's no telling what they know or if they've been totally assimilated by hostile temporal factions of the future. Again, you could do a whole saga on this, on their technology, on what's going on. If it is happening, how do you know? How do you not know? And while it's easy to dismiss the possibilities for many different reasons, it doesn't necessarily seem very important right now. Ooh, there's, aliens from the future trying to destroy humanity.
I mean, seriously, I'm ready to call Dr. Phil because this guy really needs mental help. I mean, he's all over the place. In the future, in the past, in the present. I mean, he's just going crazy.
And perhaps there's a Starship Enterprise or something like that trying to save us. Maybe they're trying to save us, maybe they're not. We don't really know. But the intelligence would suggest that whatever happens in the future is catastrophic in nature. And whatever the Starship Enterprise did come here to try to do something is perhaps something like a science experiment gone wrong, a Philadelphia experiment where they're neither here nor now, really. Caught somewhere in between, not in normal time or space, but in some other state altogether. Again, there's a lot to analyze when it comes to the realms of possibilities. And eventually, it's almost certain to occur. Technology will evolve, perhaps. Let's not say certainly, but there's a high probability that technology will advance to the point where people are able to travel through time. And chances are, in this vast universe, we're not alone. And their technology may be much more advanced. And, of course, that's really not probably not the best way to put it, because the metrics of technological expansion due to AI in the future could be something that's just about unimaginable. They say right now the super AI of today, just one computer, has the equivalent thought-put as the entire world population. 1 second of computing time is equal to 8 billion people thinking about something right now. They say super AI can do 10,000 years of research, of human research, in a week. That's today's metrics. You think about advanced civilizations millions of years ahead, if that's a possibility. Again, you could have so many debates about how old is the universe. Is it really just 5,000 years old? Could be. We don't really know, because sometimes a day is a year in the Bible. So, we're given a summary. We're not given the entire history of the universe. A quick summary, probably. But when you think about the possibilities, the probabilities, it's highly probable that we're dealing with all sorts of things out there. Not sure how many people have spent a lot of time looking at the artwork, because that's all you can really say about it, really. Although people with telescopes claim that they can see things out there. We don't really know if it's really out there or not. It looks like it's out there. And so, saying that we're all alone is certainly one possibility. And then the conversation ends there. But if we try to imagine what might be out there, then you can pretty much have an endless conversation on the subject. And that's what we're going to do. Maybe. We'll see how bad the trolls are in this video. Because to some people it doesn't really matter what you say. The facts don't matter. The possibilities don't matter. Nothing really matters. It's really automatic for some people. Like a bot. But hopefully something shakes from the tree. Something happens by talking about this, by thinking about this. So, the intelligence, the counterintelligence. There's a future war. And they made a movie, Future War, and it was that. Nobody will think about it ever again. It's kind of like the Matrix 4. I mean, the first ones, really grip people's imagination, and they've been thinking about it ever since. And then they had to put out something that was so bunk that it just left, a bad taste in everybody's mouth, and now nobody wants to talk about anything like that. No more futurism. Let's just talk about the Vades. Or the videos disappearing on the Skynet, internet. But according to the intelligence in the future wars, we're dealing with known factions of alien races that are fighting humanity. You could talk about, how did this begin? Why did this happen? There's been reports over the years from numerous sources that have talked about these known species. The reptilians, the greys, etc., etc. Where do they come from? Now, some say that some of these factions come from the neighborhood of the constellation Orion. What does that mean exactly? I mean, they look like they're neighbors when you look at the constellation, but in fact some of these stars are hundreds of light years apart. They just look like a picture. But you could call it an area code. They say some of these aliens come from Orion. Some of these aliens come from the Draco area code. Some of these aliens come from the Andromeda galaxy. And so that's what we have to work with. There may be more, there may be less. There may be many more. And there probably are. There could be entire federations. Galaxies working together. Every galaxy is like a mini universe. And you have to wonder about how do they travel from one place to another? Is it convenient? Can they wormhole from one galaxy to another? From one star to another? I mean, anything's possible, right? But eventually the numbers, if the numbers are real, eventually the numbers are so big that you just don't even know. The probabilities become less likely. And so you really have to think about all of this in terms of not only possibilities, but probability. It's probably more likely to travel through time, to be able to travel through time than to travel from one end of the universe to another. But that doesn't mean it's not possible. Maybe some people can do that and others can't. Maybe some people can jump 100 years or 1,000 years, and others can only jump, 10 years. We don't really know. But the more you know about, topics like physics and the like, the more you think about things in terms of probabilities. It's more probable that you can time travel 10 years than 100 years. What are some of the difficulties of time travel that you could encounter? You have to be in the same time and space as your target. We don't really know about the mechanics of our solar system. We could pretend that we know, and we could say that the Earth is stationary and never moves. Could be, which would make it easier, because then you could just focus on the problem of time. What time is it? What time do you want to go to? But if the Earth moves and you travel back in time on Main Street, the Earth is not going to be at that location 10 years from now or 10 years ago from now. And so now you have to start thinking about location. And so, obviously, the greater the distance, the greater the road trip, the more logistics are involved. And some people can plan, 2 weeks in advance and do it perfectly, They've got a change of clothes for every day. They've got enough of a budget to finance the trip every day and the trip back, etc. And some people, are hitchhiking and they just throw things together in a bag. We don't really know. When it comes to the resources required, and undoubtedly there's some serious resources required. And you could think about, private entities trying to do this, and then galactic federations and the like trying to do this, or alien factions trying to do this. How many planets are they mining? What are their resources? What's their budget? Do they own a galaxy? Have they assimilated a galaxy? How many different possibilities are happening in each of these different mini universes, these galaxies? If there is such a thing. They say there is. The evidence isn't overwhelming, but it's certainly there. People can zoom in to a certain extent with just a regular telescope. They've been looking at the Andromeda galaxy for quite some time. What is it exactly? We don't really know. We could spend time on the Milky Way. What does that look like on our horizon at night with just a camera and the like? Do we actually see a galaxy there?
Well, if you're still watching this video, you can't say I didn't warn you. But if you think this guy's taking those stupidity pills from the STAVELEYS show, this is what happens. I bet 3 years from now he'll probably be in the hospital in the psych ward.
A lot of unknowns. But that's really the nature of the conflict that we're up against. Unknowns. We don't get a whole lot of information when it comes to this spiritual war in the Bible. It talks about the devil. It talks about unclean spirits. It talks about spiritual wickedness. But we don't get a whole lot more information. But it could mean a lot of things. And we're probably not dealing with the cartoon equivalent of the devil and demons. You know, when people think about that, they think, oh, that's no big deal. You know, we've seen the cartoons. That's no big deal. But what does that mean, really? Anyways, getting back to the future war and the temporal wars and the Mandela effect and the butterfly effects that this kind of thing can create. Well, it's an interesting story, but again, according to the intelligence, something catastrophic happens in the future. The Bible tells us essentially that the heavens and the earth will pass away. So
The Bible says that we're going to get a new heaven and a new earth. It's in the Bible. Look it up.
something big is going to happen. And perhaps this is part of that story. Now, where we go from here really hasn't been planned out. In fact, this entire discussion has really not been planned out at all. But it's worth noting that the enemy that we're dealing with, the real enemies that we're dealing with, have privileged information of the future. And it's this interaction with advanced technologies and advanced civilizations that's really shaping the politics and the world as we know it today, whether we realize it or not. And we really want to talk about these future wars and how it's impacting us today. But it seems like we're definitely inching towards the epicenter of the story. In a temporal way. We'll have to leave it there for this broadcast. We'll see what the response is, the interest is, and perhaps we'll pick up this conversation in a future broadcast. Like and share if you want to. Well, that's in the book of Exodus, chapter 20, 10 Commandments. We're not allowed to make images or replicate the likeness of anything that's in the heavens above. And we're not allowed to do a lot of things, but we do it anyways in this world. Like we're not allowed to even take pictures, believe it or not. We're not allowed to make replicas of the likeness of anything that's male or female. That's in the book of Deuteronomy. Not many people know that. Not many people care. We do care. And so that's why this video will self-destruct. We're not going to keep it up out there, but we think that it's an interesting topic that's relevant to what's going on for many different reasons. But there's only so much you can do about technology like this. And we're talking about not only time travel, but cloaking technology and the like. Weapons that are way beyond anything people have ever encountered before. with civilizations that don't really care about little ants like us. But we certainly do feel that there's something that people can do about what's going on out here. This is a spiritual war, and we are spiritual creatures in physical bodies. And so we were talking about that relationship between these fallen angels manifesting in the physical. We're physical that can manifest in the spiritual. And so it seems like we're at the core of the story. We have a role to play. And instead of being slaves, perhaps we can be warriors.
So what do you think about him? Is he a slave or a warrior? Will you want him to be on your side to fight this battle? The battle of the mind?
In this war. We'll leave it there for this broadcast. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Till the next time. If you're listening to this,